Hello everyone, welcome back to another spoiler video for Zendikar Rising. We also have a couple cards here to go over for the Zendikar Rising Commander decks, but we're going to go over September 4th and September 5th. First card we're going to look at needs a translation. It is Hagra Bite, 4 mana black instant. If any opponent controls no basic land, this spell costs 1 less to cast. It destroys a target creature. So I think that's pretty average. You get the cost reduction, so it becomes a 3 mana black kill spell. I like it because it's not just a certain kind of creature. Like a lot of these spells tend to be destroy target non-black, non-artifact creature, which is okay, but you want the freedom to destroy any creature you want to destroy. You could flip it to be a land, Hagra Pit. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for 1 black. We also get Cragplate Baloth, 7 mana green beast, 6/6 with a kicker cost of 3. This spell can't be countered. It has hexproof and haste. If Cragplate Baloth was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 4+1/+1 counters on it. So if you pay a total of 10 mana, you could get a 10/10 hexproof haste creature. I don't really think it's that good for Commander, but who knows. We get this cool looking burn spell, Shatter Skull Smashing, 2 red and an X sorcery. Shatter Skull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, Shatter Skull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. So, kind of your usual burn divided damage spell. We've seen a ton of these in red, and it can also enter the field as a land if you want it to. Kind of the same thing before, but this time it taps for red. We get a black spell, 3 mana sorcery, Inscription of Ruin, with a kicker cost of 4. It has 3 modes here. You can choose one. If the spell was kicked, you choose any number instead. First mode is target opponent discards 2 cards. Second mode is return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And the third mode is destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Don't really know how good that's going to be in Commander, more like a limited card. We get a Thieving Skydiver, 2 mana blue Merfolk Rogue. 2/1 kicker cost of X. It has flying, and when Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact was an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. We see a lot of thieves in blue. I think this one has some potential for Commander because there's a ton of powerful artifacts. There's a ton of powerful equipment decks. Think of all the swords you could take with this and immediately equip onto the creature. I think if we have better kicker synergies, this could be quite the interesting card to play around with. We get Kargan Intimidator for 2 mana, red, Human Warrior, 3/1. Cowards can't block warriors. So this goes back to Battle Bond. There was a giant that also did something like this, if I remember correctly. So you have 3 modes to choose from, and you can only choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, and you can pay 1 mana to do any of these. The first mode is Kargan Intimidator, gets +1/+1 until end of turn. The second mode is target creature becomes a coward until end of turn, so you can make your warriors unblockable in certain situations. Target warrior gains trample until end of turn is the third mode. I like modes, you know me. I like options, and I think it could be a perfect 2-drop for a genuine warrior tribal deck. So look out for this one. We get this massive blue sorcery, 7 mana, Seagate Restoration. You draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand +1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, which I love that kind of ability. It puts your mind at ease. You don't have to worry about finding a reliquary tower or a thought vessel, because you pretty much just have a million cards in your hand, carefree. It also flips into a land, Seagate Reborn, but it doesn't have to enter the battlefield tapped if you pay 3 life, so it's a little bit better in my opinion. We get Morag, Fury of Akum, 6 mana red Minotaur Warrior, legendary Minotaur Warrior, 6/6. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it is attacked this turn, which is pretty deadly. And the second ability, wait till you read this. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. I think it's kind of safe to do this in red because there's only so many land drops you can get in mono red. Obviously, you're going to see this in some landfall strategies, just getting a million combat phases. Think about all the things that you can do with that. If you can get 4 or 5 land drops in a turn, you're probably going to win the game, especially if all your creatures are getting +1/+0 for each time they attacked. That's just so good. And here we get this really crazy looking card on the left. 6 mana, red, green, Thylath, World Sculptor. So 6 mana, legendary elemental. Kind of hard to read because of the card's design, I guess, but it's a 5/5. When Thylath World Sculptor enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each basic land you control, so it's kind of like Avenger of Zendikar, but not as good because it only counts your basics. And it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put 4+1/+1 counters on a target plant you control. So it's basically Avenger of Zendikar if you wanted to make it more tame, and also a legendary creature, but I think you're getting 4+1/+1 counters on a plant for every time you get a land. I think that could be pretty deadly. You just keep racking up the power. We get Luminarch Aspirant. 2 mana, white human cleric, a 1/1 at the beginning of combat on your turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That might be useful in +1/+1 counter decks. I don't know how good that's going to be elsewhere. It's a cheap way, I guess you can get counters in combat. Then we get Magmatic Channeler. 2 mana red human wizard, a 1/3. As long as there are 4 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it gets +3/+1, so it could become a 4/4. You could tap it to discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. I don't know how useful this is going to be in Commander. I think you have a lot better ways of getting to spells quickly, so it just seems like more of the same. It might actually be better in Limited. So for September 5th, we get some cards here. It looks like bulk. The real news, of course, going to be the Zendikar Rising Commander decks. We get a couple of the commanders here. Anawan the Ruined Thief. So for 4 mana, blue-black, legendary creature, vampire, rogue. Other rogues you control get +1/+1. Whenever one or more rogues you control deal combat damage to a player, that player mills a card for each 1 damage dealt to them. If the player mills at least 1 creature card this way, you draw a card. So very good. You have a rogue tribal commander, which I think is kind of a curveball here because I think a lot of people were thinking about maybe vampires in blue-black. As you can see here, we have Mirko Vosk, but I'm definitely on board with Rogue Tribal. We have way too much Vampire Tribal anyway. And we get a Naya Commander option. I think overall Naya has been pretty lackluster. Could definitely use some more power in that department. Obun, Moldaya Ancestor, legendary creature, Elf Spirit. At the beginning of combat on your turn, up to 1 target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn. Where X is Obun's power, it's still a land, and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So I think that could be really powerful. If you want to fool around with +1/+1 counters and also have a land strategy, I think that could be pretty unique. Again, that's the whole reason to have like Avenger of Zendikar in your deck. You could have the other one that we just showed off that could get counters on those plants. Anything that could also redistribute counters, put it on Obun so you can make a massive land. That elemental creature land is also going to be able to get through with a lot of damage because it has trample and haste. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think about these spoilers. I'll be sure to cover whatever I missed in a follow-up video for spoilers. But anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.